So what is truth and why does truth matter?
Well, on the ultimate level, there's only one truth, which is emptiness, right? But then even the Buddha said even emptiness is empty, or even the statement that everything is a fabrication is just another fabrication. It's just another statement generated by the mind. So what I mean by fabrication or emptiness is that everything is a mental construct without any exceptions. Again, even the notion that, oh, this is all a mental construct is in itself a mental construct. So everything that you're perceiving is through the six senses, right? You have sight, you have sound, you have smell, you have taste, feelings, thoughts. Yeah, there are the six senses, including thoughts or consciousness. They're just arising in experience. There is an experience, but what this experience is, in and of itself, apart from what's been perceived by the mind, is unknowable. And Buddhist calls it suchness. I think Donald Hoffman also arrived at a similar conclusion when he said that everything is just consciousness. But the content of this conscious experience, you don't know what the fuck you're perceiving really. Without the mental filters, without the linguistic and so the intellectual matrix that you're slapping onto your experience, it's just the suchness of things. And things are unknowable, really.
Could we perhaps define what we mean by awareness, consciousness, emptiness? I'm sure there's different words that
Yeah,
can be used in that
right.
category. And then also to make a distinction between awareness.
Yeah, that's why I say you can't really arrive at truth through language and through concepts or even through dialogue, really. It's a matter of direct experience. And like I said, the direct experience of what? You don't really know. Even the word consciousness, people throw that word around a lot. There is a phase in your spiritual journey when you realize that, oh, everything is just consciousness. But that in itself becomes just another ground, just another statement generated by the mind, actually. If you really drill me down and ask me what the mind is, or what is consciousness, what is awareness, what is emptiness, even, I'm going to have to tell you that I don't really know. Everything you think you know about consciousness, even the notion that everything is consciousness, again, derives from some kind of thing you read.
That's a tough.
Yeah, yeah. See, every time we come to this kind of question, one of the thought experience, or a really simple thought experience I have people do and inquire into is ask yourself what the universe or what nature itself would think about this question. Would nature itself, let's just say, perhaps we could access the nature of nature without the mental filters of being a human. What would the universe itself think about itself? It wouldn't think about itself at all. It's just being. It's also another word that sometimes I like to use. It's less confusing. It's just being. Yeah. So when I use the word consciousness and awareness and mind or being or emptiness, I'm actually talking about the same thing. Yeah. Mind. Sometimes I use the word mind to describe the content of consciousness, to separate the content of consciousness from the context, the space in which all the content's arising from. But then again, sometimes I use mind as well. Maybe the mind with the capital M. Like some spiritual traditions like to use the word the nature of mind with a capital M. But ultimately, they're also one and the same. The content and the context are one. There's no distinction at all between appearance and awareness, or between source and appearance, between emptiness and form. If you perceive the conventional world from the ultimate perspective, there's absolutely no difference. But then if you haven't accessed the ultimate perspective, if you haven't accessed emptiness, then everything you're perceiving is through the conventional lens.
And conventional lens being thinking, feeling, and that's pretty much it.
Conventional lens,
Emotions.
yeah. Well, you see, it's really hard to explain what the difference is really between the conventional and ultimate, because
Would it
like
be,
I
say,
said,
through the veil of the ego or just awareness? Would that be a good way to describe
well,
it?
see, even the word ego can be tricky because there's absolutely no distinction between the ego and awareness and God. Actually, the ego is just a more contracted version of this vast, boundless and timeless space of consciousness. So I always tell people there's no distinction between God and ego. It's just that the ego is just a contracted version of God, in which is just vibrating in a quote unquote lower frequency. But it's still the same, should we say, substance, this undefinable substance that's vibrating into different forms. And that vibration gives rise to different contexts, or different levels of the conventional realm. So perhaps the ego is just a very low vibration of the same stuff as the vast space of mind or consciousness, mind with a capital M. Yeah. And that's the last fetter of the 10 fetters models in Buddhism, is the attachment to knowing. Each fetter correlates with a belief. And if you remove all the 10 fetters, you're liberated. And the paradox is, the less you know about reality, quote unquote, conceptually, the more you become reality, the more infinite, spacious, and timeless you become.
And Frank, could we perhaps bring down this understanding to a more practical level? Mm-hmm. For example, if we went around the globe and we talked to people, there's going to be some kind of suffering. There's going to be war, there's going to be inequality, there's going to be destruction of our plants, animals, and so on. There's a lot of disorder if we went around the globe. There's obviously some good things are happening too, but if we're concerned about change, if we're concerned about global change, I think it's important to observe these things. And there is this thing that we call suffering, anxiety, fear, and so on. And to me, it seems like the fundamental problem is that we have to understand ourselves and who we truly are. Because out of that misunderstanding is where all these problems emerge.
Right.
We just explore this, because I might be wrong, but I just want to explore this to find out what is the root of our disorder. And perhaps if we could understand what the root is, there's going to be a natural order that comes out of that.
Yeah. So all suffering comes down to the contraction of your true being, right? So basically, when I say what your true being is just this, you could say this vast, boundless space that's somehow aware, right? Again, you can call that awareness or consciousness, whatever, right? But all those defilements and those conditionings serve as sort of this lenses of perception that we're slapping on top of raw experience. So all the suffering comes from that, and that creates separation, and the difference between you and I, the difference between this computer and this microphone, all that are just thoughts, are conceptual lenses that we slap onto reality. Once we remove all the lenses of perception and we enter the state of being, pure being, so to speak, the suffering goes away. Because all the suffering comes from you contracting your body mind into this clenched fist. And everybody's walking around with this clenched fist due to the conditionings and the filters, shall we, slapping onto raw experience. And that is what's creating suffering. As soon as you're born into this world, and then somebody gives you a name and point at you and say, hey, you are dumb and I'm Frank, that is already a lens of perception that's been slapped onto you, due to like culture conditionings and all that stuff. So like conditionings are pretty much all culturally based. Well, I mean, there is some kind of biological condition as well, like your desire to eat food and perhaps drink water, or maybe even to have sex. Those are more like deeper biological conditions. But on top of that, we have a lot of culture conditionings, such as our names and the beliefs we have about ourselves, how our culture is different from yours, our races even. Yeah, just our different identities. All those things are slapped onto us through our upbringings and things like that. And even after you remove all the lenses of perceptions, even when you become suffering free, you can still feel pain but then there's not going to be any mental suffering attached to those pain. You can still have sex and eat food and drink water and enjoy them, but there's no craving for them. There's no afterthought or judgments or resistance that are slapped on top of just the raw experience of, oh, I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink some water. I'm hungry, I'm going to get some food. Yeah, so all of our suffering comes from that. Basically, if I can sum up what suffering is pain times resistance, or even pleasure times resistance. Any kind of experience you're having, whether positive or negative, if you resist it, you're contracting yourself. And you're creating solidities in the body-mind. In that process of contracting this infinite space of what you really are at the deepest level, or some other people can say that's the nature of reality even. If you contract that into a tiny little ball and you walk around in this clenched fist and perceive how you're separate from everybody else, how you have different beliefs, different ideologies, different names, different personalities even, then that's where the majority of suffering comes from. It comes from the sense of separation, or some people call it the dream of separation. And this whole project of spirituality or awakening or non-duality, if you want to get into that, is about returning to your true nature and removing all the lenses of perceptions and the filters that are generated by the mind. That's why they call it waking up. You're waking up from the dream of separation, from the dream of the false identity, the false self, or the ego, into this undefinable space that's aware and awake. And everybody's space, everybody's awakeness is the same. And even if you remove all the lens of perception, like I said, there is still some experience here. And then you can even go deeper and say, even this experience here is another fabrication. It's just being fabricated by experience itself, or being fabricated by the mind. So going back to what I was saying earlier, how everything is a mental construct, that everything is a fabrication. And that's what Buddhists mean by emptiness. And that emptiness can be said to be your true nature. So your true nature is this undefinable space, unknowable space that you can't describe it at all. Anytime you use a word, it's already slapping a label on this mu, so to speak, this void. Yeah. I'm trying to describe it, and I'm always using words already. I'm saying void, and people are going to be like, what is the void? Okay, this is the void. Oh, it's all mental construct. Once you start talking about it, then, they say the Tao that can be spoke of is not the Tao. Yeah, but then we have to use language to communicate. But if we can see through the lenses of perception of language itself, then it makes communication a lot easier in a sense, but it could also be tricky if you don't find the right words and if you don't communicate right. But that going back to what I said earlier about how the conventional truth and the ultimate truth are one, really. Even though language can be very tricky and can divide, it's the only thing that we have to go on, really. But then language is also part of this emptiness as well. It's just the form that's vibrating as this emptiness. So words and ego and all that conventional stuff, the human level stuff, all the individual pain and suffering, or you're individual, I'm an individual, they're all included in the absolute truth, because infinity is all inclusive. But if you only come from that space of the relative domain without accessing to, the ultimate, then that's where the suffering is. But if you operate the relative world through the non-lens or the non-perspective of this vast infinite space, and then you can still have a human experience without the suffering, without the illusions.
So if we were to explore how do you be free from suffering, it seems to me that it's necessary to understand the words that you use, cultural conditioning. But would it be correct in saying that when you said cultural conditioning, you also mean the false self, you also mean
Yes.
the ego,
Yes.
and all that is just the same, different words for the same meaning, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the ego is just a conditioning, it's really. It's just about a bunch of conditionings piled up into a tiny ball somewhere inside you that you identify as being me. For most people, it's somewhere in the head, especially Western civilization, because we're taught that, the thinking mind is in the head, somewhere between the eyes, behind the eyes, like here, and other cultures maybe in the heart, like some Eastern cultures say the self in the heart. So some people feel like a contraction in the heart. So basically, there are a few major contraction places, in the head, in the heart, and maybe in the gut. Any solidity in the body is taken to be identified as the self. And in order to release that contraction, you need to, do some spiritual practice, some self-inquiry, some contemplation, exercises, no different from weightlifting, that, kind of dissolve the conditionings in the body. We can do that through things like Vipassana or letting go meditation, just letting go of the contraction, like the way you release the clenching of a fist.
Is that ultimately what the problem is then? To understand our conditioning. And if we can understand what our conditioning is, perhaps everything else would just be obvious from there.
You can put it like that, sure. Yeah. Understand the lenses of perception that we're slapping onto raw experience. So experience can experience itself without a center point, without an experiencer. Because this experiencer, this thinker, this seer, this hearer, this feeler that we're, pretending to be what we are, is the source of this clinging, the source of this grasping. Because this solidity is always going to hijack things that you see around you and then say, oh, this is mine. This is me. This is different from that. From the ultimate perspective, there's no such thing as conditionings even, because conditionings are just stories that we made up in our mind. But throughout the process of releasing this condition, this clenching of the fist, you sort of have to use an illusion to destroy illusion. Like the great sage Ramana Maharshi said that by doing self-inquiry, you are removing a thorn from a rose with another thorn until you realize that both are illusions. Yeah, so all the spiritual practices and even trying to understand what we are ultimately are just tools. They're just tools for you to use. And the Buddha said once you use his raft, which is the Dharma, to cross over the river, you throw the raft away. You don't need it anymore. And the Buddha himself also said the whole Dharma is empty, meaning that this whole spiritual pursuit is ultimately also just a fabrication you use to destroy other fabrication. It's just another program you use to demolish all the other programs. That's another word that people might relate to, is programs. We're running all those programs, and then we're just kind of letting those programs run us. And those programs are, I guess you could say, they're just conditionings that being accumulated throughout your lifetime. Yeah, different beliefs that you're operating from.
Yeah, could we explore that? We have to do something, and what is that something that we could do? Because for every individual, it seems to be different.
Right. I think the first and foremost, to understand what we are at the deepest level, and to understand like what the fuck this is, like what is the nature of experience. So I made a video called Meditation and Contemplation for Beginners, and the first thing I said in that video is the ultimate goal of meditation is to understand the nature of experience, or you can say the nature of mind, or what we are at the deepest level, or what is reality. Again, that reality is just another word for being, really. Once you understand that experientially, and then you do the things that different meat suits are programmed to do, more or less. For example, even after a realization, after an enter non-duality, after I dissolved the center of experience, I'm still playing the violin. I'm still creating videos talking about these things, and I'm still doing things I love to do, like basic human stuff. Going out to dinner with my friends, going to the movies, stuff like that. You don't want to lose your human elements, and the human elements, once it's carried out spontaneously through this void, then everything will be effortless, and everything will be done through quote unquote love, because emptiness and love are identical. Once you empty out the self, there's nothing but love. Fullness and emptiness are two sides of the same coin. So it's only after you remove all the lenses of perceptions can you truly love unconditionally. Because every other kind of love before removing the lenses of conditioning is through conditionings. For example, it's a conditioning that a romantic love have to be carried out a certain way. There's certain rules that you have to abide if you are engaged in a romantic relationship. I love you, and this love is coming from conditionings. I love you only because you're a woman and I'm a man, or like you're beautiful and I'm whatever you think I am. And this attraction, a lot of it comes from conditioning. It comes from a sense of separation. How can an individual love another individual that way when there is absolutely no separation? When you enter the love with a capital L, you can still have love with a small l, such as romantic love, and of course, feminine love. But then they're coming from a vastly radical different perspective. And that's again going back to how emptiness and form are identical, how the ultimate and the relative are identical. And that point is a really important one, really. Because you're not rejecting any human experiences. You know, we're not going to the cave and be like, okay, here I recognize the nature of mind or whatever. I'm just going to go sit in the cave and do nothing and watch the world burn. I mean, that's one way emptiness expresses itself. You know, that's one way being expresses itself. Some people do that. And that can create its own ripple of quote unquote transmission as well. Because, you know, some people just want to sit in the cave and meditate. And that's their role. But then, me personally, I like to engage in the world. Yeah. But then your engagement with the world after recognizing being, everything is spontaneous. Everything just happens by itself. There's absolutely no doer anywhere. So it's just empty phenomena rolling on. And rolling on, and then it vibrates into form. Yeah. So if you ask me what I'm doing with these things and like why am I like doing this rather than that on a moment-to-moment basis, the most concrete but maybe even the most abstract answer is that it just happens. It just happens through the causes and conditions of the universe or reality, or the cause and condition of, you know, your sensory inputs and outputs, and then things just happen. You have no control of anything. Even the feeling or the thought that, hey, I'm in control of this, I'm doing this because of that, that's just an afterthought. That's just a mind-generated concept that you lace on top of a reality, which is just happening by itself. And again, when I say reality, I mean the same thing as being and consciousness. Yeah.
So it does seem that everything boils down to understanding our conditioning. So then the question comes up, why?
Or understanding that there's never a conditioning to begin with, really.
No, what I mean by that is to even understand that, to me, is in the category of understanding our conditioning. Because that just essentially means understanding life, understanding thinking, understanding ourselves, understanding what all of this really is.
Yeah.
To me, that's
but then when you speak of understanding, again, we have to sort of separate, make a distinction at least between intellectual understanding, conceptual understanding, and
actual experiential.
Yeah, because that's the space that most people can't really truly grasp without having some kind of experiential glimpse into their true nature. Yeah. Because everything that before at least a glimpse is going to come from the mind. It's going to come from conditioning itself. That's why yesterday I answered a question somebody asked me about shadow work. People get into this work and they're like, okay, I'm going to do shadow work to clean up my conditionings, to clean up the defilements and the traumas that have been accumulating in my body my whole life. And then I always tell people that if you don't wake up first and then do the cleanup, because, you know, their masters, they say this, waking up first and then you clean up and you grow up. In order to truly clean up your conditionings, you have to let this boundless and timeless space of awareness dissolve you. If you're still dissolving yourself without dissolving the center point, without removing this loss of perception, the center, which is the bundle of sensations jumbled up together, and due to conditioning, you put a label on it and say it's you. Locus of attention that you're pretending to look out the world from. Then you're just doing it through the lens of other conditionings, and you're creating more karmas. You're creating this healer, this cleaner that's doing the cleaning. So you're actually just rearranging the garbages in your room instead of realizing that you're the boundless space that includes all the stuff.
So you transform your identity from the ego mind to formless awareness and let this infinite boundless space dissolve the rest of your conditionings. But if you still have specks of solidity in there that's taking credit for or try to verify or grasp onto awareness as a new ground or identity, there's still going to be suffering. That's the infinite self versus true no self, which I'll talk about more in the later part of this video. You don't just want to rearrange the content. You want to recognize the context and then let the context dissolve the contents and then realize finally that context and content are one and they're both empty. So doing shadow work before awakening is like shadow work light. So if you do a shadow work or cleaning up before awakening, the nostril perception, the center, is always going to hijack whatever you're trying to dissolve and morph it into a more self, so a different version of the self. I call it putting lipstick on a peg. You're just replacing conditionings with more aesthetic conditionings.
When I said dissolve, I don't mean like they just disappear. Some stuff do disappear, and then we come back again. Some defilements do disappear, but then other, beliefs can still be there. But then you just see through how they're just empty vibrations. They don't have any inherent existence. They're not real the way that we think they are. So you're really just seeing through the solidity of phenomenons and how source or how appearance and emptiness and awareness are one and the same. Yeah.
See, what's interesting to me is the very fact that you use the word shadow work. Not everybody's familiar with that term. And the fact that you use the word the Buddha, and, to me, it seems like knowledge is conditioning too.
Yes.
And to me, the question then is, well, it's a question that I would like to explore. If we had no concepts, if we had no Buddha, if we had no Jesus, if we had no Lao Tzu, if we had no Muhammad, if we had no Ramana Maharshi, if we had no teachers, what are we going to do? I'm experiencing fear. I'm experiencing anxiety. I don't know what this happiness thing is. We're going to have to do something. So to me, it seems like these knowledges, the knowledge that we have from our gurus, from our teachers, can't prevent us from understanding these things in the first place. Because we're going to follow a practice or we're going to follow a method. But we don't necessarily know if it's going to work. We're only doing it because somebody else said it. What if we had the capacity to answer these questions for ourselves? Because ultimately it just boils down to answering questions for ourselves and seeing it very clearly, having an experiential understanding of it.
Yes.
So to me, it does seem that knowledge prevents us from going further and deeper and deeper and deeper.
Right, exactly. First of all, you don't need gurus to tell you what you really are. In fact, everybody's experiencing their true nature. They're just experiencing a more contracted version of it. And you made a good point, like gurus and the whole path of spirituality, the whole dharma could be its own attachments. And I see a lot of people, myself included, back then when I was, still going through it, was very attached to the dharma itself. Like I said, I used this program of spirituality to dissolve all the other programs that I was running. But then there was still this program of spirituality. I was still seeing the world through the lens of, emptiness, or awakening, or non-duality. Again, those are very subtle lenses, eventually have to be resolved. And I think Ramana also talks about this and how, like, at the end, you're still holding on to that one, this knowledge or spiritual truths. And to let that go, of the identity of the spiritual seeker is probably one of the hardest things to do. Yeah, so all the gurus are pointing at the moon with their fingers. But then you don't want to get stuck at the fingers, at the techniques, at the instructions, or even the knowledge, at least the intellectual knowledge of what truth is. Jed McKenna has this, I don't know if you're familiar with Jed McKenna. Yeah, he had this technique called spiritual autolysis or something like that. It's kind of like a contemplation, self-inquiry techniques, where basically he just asks you to write down what you think is true until there's nothing true left. So every single statement that you think is true, you just kind of write it down, and every answer should be a no. And you're gonna get to the bottom of all this. The last question is it truth that nothing is true? Is that also the truth? If that's also a no, then the whole entire structure of concept or the thinking mind collapses. and then you enter the space of non-duality.
Right? Could I zoom in on that a little bit? Because to me, yeah, I've come across that before. But the one thing that I wasn't, like, for example, if I asked a question, speaking purely from the mathematical perspective, not the absolute perspective, 2 + 2 = 4. Well, you could say that's true. It's not 5, it's not 3.
Right. I can say that's true.
Then if we asked, is nationalism, do religions, do nationalities divide people? I feel like that's also true. Is it true to say that thoughts occur? That's also true. So, like, so could we zoom in on that a little bit and just make it clear?
Yeah, that's all true on the conventional level, on the level of concepts.
So we're speaking about the absolute level then, right?
Yeah, when I say nothing is true, I'm speaking from the absolute level. It's only when you realize that nothing is true and everything is a fabrication, and then going back into those fabrications and those conventional truths, can you operate from the source of love and connectivity. Yeah. So you can say where I don't like to use the word God too much because it's a convoluted word with a lot of people. So you can a metaphor could be after we realize that we're all gods, and then going back to the human world, and then pretend in a way, pretend we are humans. Can we really have a loving and compassionate human experience? Because you realize at the deepest level that there's no separation. Yeah, but then the separation, the separation can still be there, but it's the separation that you experience coming from non-duality is vastly different from separation experience through separation itself. Yeah, because again, oneness also includes all the particulars. Even just saying everything is one is another. It could be another thing that you're attached to. Yeah.
So could we ask then, what prevents separation? And would I be correct in saying that what prevents separation is conditioning, thoughts, attachments, knowledge, beliefs, all these things?
Yeah.
Which essentially is just thoughts.
Yeah, that's just thoughts.
Conceptual understanding.
Yeah. And what are thoughts? It's just contraction of energy. Right? I like to going back to sort of the visceral and this embodied feeling of separateness, to sort of let go of the grasping of concepts. Every time you feel separated, or you feel like a trauma is arising, or you feel like your ego is acting out, you feel a contraction in your body. Even a thought, you get lost in a thought. What is that? It's just a contraction of energy somewhere like in the head. Yeah. But we're not really inside our head as a matter of direct experience. Right.
That's interesting because you said contraction of energy. But if I'm a 3-year-old, I don't have the language of contraction energy. So I would use a different word to, represent that. But essentially we're just pointing at the same thing, right? Which is just thoughts.
Yeah. You can say that. Yeah, thoughts are just contractions of energies. Or at least thoughts that you identify with. You can have thoughts without a thinker, and there won't be any contractions. And thoughts would just be perceived as empty phenomenons rolling on. That's no different from the clouds that are passing by. The clouds that are passing, I'm perceiving the clouds right now passing by. They're really in the same space as the thoughts I'm generating right now. There's no center that's grasping onto those sensations and say, this is my thought. Those are my clouds. They're just phenomenons rolling on, and then rise in the same space as all the other sensations. The body, feelings, sight, sound, everything. Yeah.
And there's a lot of spiritual material out there. There's many different teachers, modern and not so modern, including Buddha and Jesus and so on. But essentially, if we looked at the essence of what they're all trying to say, are they all just pointing to our true nature, awareness, being, consciousness, God, whatever word you want to use? Essentially, is that what everybody's pointing to?
Yeah.
It's just that we have different words to describe it.
Different words to describe it, yes. And I would say that different, because we still have this, biological mammal suit. And I think the same realization is the same realization everywhere. There's only one truth, really. The one truth of, the indescribable, your direct experience now, without any contractions, whatever, or any identification to contractions, right? But then there could be different flavors to these realizations. That's why you see different teachers talk about it a little differently, and they might experience it slightly differently only because we still have this memo suit that are with us, and there are still certain biological conditionings in this meat suit, different wirings of the brain, so to speak, that sort of manifest this truth slightly differently on the conventional level, but they're all pointing to the same thing. But then there's a lot of like different debates or other traditions, you know, the Hinduism versus like the Buddhism. You know, the Hinduism like to talk about the true self, like the Brahman, and you know, Buddha would say, you know, there's no self at all. You know, the true self doesn't exist. There is no self. But they're really talking about the same thing. True self is no self. But then if you're went through this path through a slightly different tradition than another person, again, the flavor of this realization could be a little bit different. So that's where a lot of confusions come from. Also, the different words that we use to describe, you know, the same thing.
And that's why I raised the point earlier that I feel like knowledge prevents us from understanding. But the question we asked initially was, what truly matters? And to me, it seems like what matters is, like you said earlier, to find out how do we live compassionately and lovingly between one another? Because we know what all of this really is. Mm-hmm. How do we find out what is intelligence, what is happiness, what is peace, what is joy, what is wisdom, what is creativity? And deep down, I feel like that's what we truly want. Mm-hmm. It's just that we try to approach it through different lens. So to me, it seems like what we're talking about here and this understanding, this one truth, this gives us the answer to these questions that we crave. And that is why it's worth inquiring into what is truth.
Yes.
As a byproduct of that understanding.
Exactly.
Right?
I agree with you. When the words that you just mentioned, you know, compassion, love, creativity, wisdom, beauty, emptiness, truth, to me, they're all the same thing. When you ask me what those words means, without going to the mind, my first answer to you is this. Just this. Yeah, this is creativity. This is infinite creativity right here, right now, in this moment. This is infinite love, and this is emptiness. This is the great void that also manifests into all existence. The singularity that manifests all forms.
You know, Ramana Maharshi said, your greatest service to the world is your own self-realization. Because all acts of compassion are conditional unless you realize your true nature. If you try to change the world without removing your conditionings, everything that you do is still going to come from your own lenses of perception.
But let's just say somebody out there doesn't have a clue about that. But yeah, they want to find out, how do you be happy? Mm-hmm. Or they want to be creative, or whatever it is.
If someone was to have zero knowledge, he read zero books about science or philosophy or even about spirituality, and then he just kind of sat down and just inquired into the nature of experience, they will arrive at the same space.
We are human mammals, like you put it, or bodysuits. We have to do something. And like you said, you want to be part of the world. And to me, it seems like it's fun, even necessary and enjoyable to find out, how do we truly cooperate between all of us globally? How do we love one another? How do we talk to one another? How do we not divide each other?
Everything that you just said, like how do we do this? How do we connect with people? How do we become more loving? They're just the byproduct of realizing your true nature. And after realizing true nature, you don't think about these things all that much anymore. Things just happen. When reality is rolling on as itself, it's always going to take the course of the least resistance. Like nature itself, this creative force, which is the same force that's making you breathe, it's the same force that's pumping your thoughts, it's the same force that gives rise to this beautiful architecture that I'm perceiving right there, is responsible for the booming of the flowers and the blowing of the wind, and it's also responsible for the desire for a cheetah to hunt down a gazelle, really. And that force of nature is always operating through its own means, through the course of least resistance. And conditionings and this whole ego thing is nothing but the contraction and the resistance to this flow of energy, this emptiness that's rolling on. That just happens by itself due to the infinite webs of cause and conditionings that are happening. And when life is found on its own without the contraction of separation of the ego, it's going to unfold through the course of least resistance.
And when you're in that state, it's flow state 24/7. Every moment is synchronicity. Every moment is perfect manifestation.
Well, is it wrong to say that when the cheetah hunts on a gazelle, it's considered evil? Yeah, the notion of good and evil doesn't exist in nature. It's a mind-generated concept. So nature rolls on, life goes on. There's gonna be pain. Like if everybody recognizes their true nature, there can still be pain in the universe, just like there can be pleasure. But then there's no resistance to that pain. There's no mental suffering that are laid on top of that pain. And without the contraction, everything just effortless. Everything just comes from spontaneous love, so to speak. I see that when the cheetah hunts on a gazelle, I see that as an act of love, really. Everything that nature does is through the act of love.
We could say the same about war then, right?
Sure.
War,
yeah.
killing each other.
Yeah, you can say from that perspective, it's from the act of love. Yeah, war,
But at the same time,
war just spontaneously appeared. It's part of the creation of nature. Yeah, war cannot exist without being super blissful all the time. They're codependent arising. I'm saying it from the perspective of non-duality. The way I perceive war is that it just happens. But then without this contraction, without this ideology, without those defilements, I would say the chances of having a war is almost zero. Because all war comes from the sense of separation. Yeah, and when I say, I'm not saying war is good. Like from the conventional perspective, of course war is not good because it causes a lot of suffering. Yeah, but see, the catch-22 is if everybody recognizes their true nature, there's probably not going to be any war.
My point was this. What do you know for certain? Perhaps let's begin there. What do you know for certain? At this very moment, what do you know with absolute certainty?
Nothing. I can tell you there's an experience here right now, but what is the experience? What is that experience? Again, like I said, you don't know. We don't actually
So when
know.
I look at war, when I look at what is the cause of suffering, and you see it clearly, war is due to division between us, separation between us, conceptual understanding. Is there not like an urge to act, to do something, to, I don't know, have discussions, have dialogues? Or is it just like, war, let the nature, let the world do whatever it does? Like, to me, that's the question that I was trying to prompt at, is like, if I look at war, if I look at suffering, we see it. We see clearly what it is and that it's unnecessary. And naturally, there's an impulse to do something about it.
Yeah, this impulse
So
just
that's what I meant by that.
Yeah, this impulse just happens too. This impulse of trying to do something, trying to help people that are suffering from maybe not just war, but even seeing my friend having a bad day and, lifting him up. Like from my perspective, it just happens. And after entering non-duality, I find myself doing that a lot more. Just spontaneously, without any intentions. It just happens.
So you want to find that sweet spot between intention and surrendering. But even intention, even just moving your direction of attention to pay attention to an object of meditation, ultimately, that's also just happening by itself too.
Yeah, because nature is always going to want everybody to live in harmony, because then the force of nature can run its course through the course of least resistance. So once you recognize the nature of nature, or the nature of mind, all those things that just happen. Yeah, you're just more likely to want to help other people. Okay, yes, everything is happening by itself. And through the causes and condition of the universe, it just happens that in this moment, in the 21st century, we're just kind of perpetuated into recognizing our true self. And
You can say this is a response to all the divisions that we feel in the world, and as a response to all the wars and stuff like that. So the universe is always trying to balance itself out. So what would a complete enlightened civilization look like theoretically? Just like the war continues to go on after your realization, I think science, technology, and advanced civilization will continue to progress, but from a much different perspective, a radically different perspective. Whatever comes before the paradigm shift will be integrated, as form and emptiness and love becomes a single unity, both on the individual level and on the collective level. In fact, I think everything you do after realization will be carried out much more efficiently, because everything will be part of the spontaneous unfoldment. Without a sense of agency or control or doer, you're in a flow state 24/7, moved by and as the most powerful and creative force in the universe, which is existence itself. So if you want to contemplate on what would a civilization look like when everybody is in their natural state, one can contemplate on ancient civilizations. Of course, this is going to be mental masturbation and all theoretical, but it's interesting to think about. Ancient civilizations, they have technologies that we cannot explain. And some of the theories are like they're using psychic power. They're using their minds and their consciousness to sculpt and create and manifest directly Sphinx and the pyramids and everything else in their civilization without materialistic technologies. I saw some like videos on YouTube of people using their power of telekinesis to like move objects. Like, I'm agnostic about that. I don't know if it's real or not. It could be. But all this is on a spectrum. If you look at a sculptor creating a sculpture, or a painter's painting, right? Or like Beethoven composing a symphony, or me making 360 videos. I always look at making films as sculpting time, and making 360 videos is sculpting the space-time continuum. See, every time I turn this camera on, I'm materializing emptiness to form. For Daniel Ingram, who after realization, he started to practice a lot of fire casino, that's his power. That's how he manifests realization. Even just pure perception itself is already manifesting power. And everything is just a spectrum of consciousness, manifesting form, spontaneously, moment to moment. Now, what if our future civilization, or the civilizations that came before us, they were already living under the paradigm that everything is mind, and they were all born enlightened, theoretically, and then they keep cultivating that power, that mental power. What would that civilization look like?
The Atlantis people, basically they had a very advanced civilization. Basically, even the Egyptians' technology was passed on from the Atlantis. So like the Sphinx, the Sphinx is all, according to that story, the Sphinx is actually a tiny version of what the Atlantis people created. It was just like a replica, a very small replica of what they created. And people still couldn't figure out how they did that. They couldn't even figure out how they built the pyramid and the Sphinx. Imagine like the Atlantis is like even a bigger version of that.
And Ra talks about the pyramids. They said that they built them.
Who?
In the Law of One. Ra said that.
Said the Atlantis people.
Well, no, they said that Ra built it.
Oh, Ra built it.
Yeah, they said they just manifested it.
Yeah.
And they used something called the Law of Confusion to essentially make it appear as though it could have possibly been done in that time, but there was no way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's kind of similar, right? So the according to the Atlantis, the story, the Atlantis people, their entire civilization is built on mind. So like everything for them, the thing we talked about, everything is mind. That's just the part of the civilization. Imagine like 10,000 enlightened beings with powers sitting in a field and just manifest a pyramid. If for that civilization, that's normal. That's their technology. But our civilization, we don't have that mental technology, so we have to build technology to manifest things like that.
Because it's our permission slip to build it.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at it physically, so the permission slips have to be physical to build it.
So this is our paradigm. Our paradigm is a materialistic paradigm.
Yeah.
In order to build a house, to build cars, it's still mind. It's still like, we have an idea and then we build it like with our hands or whatever, manually with machines or whatever. But for Atlantis people, if it's true, they were much more efficient in building things because it's mind-to-mind connection. It doesn't have to go through another layer of physicality. So that's why they can build things that are more advanced than us without having any technology, supposedly. Right? So just imagine like 10,000 like Buddhas sitting there. Okay, we're gonna manifest this, and then they would just carve things. They would just manifest it with their minds, right?
Again, this is just hypothetical conjunction, but if you look at pure perception itself, due to the millions and billions of cosmic conditionings, in the precise moment, boom, disappears. You're conscious of this moment right here, right now. How does that happen? It's pure magic. Everything that you're experiencing right now is just being manifested as itself, out of thin air. How does that happen? See, when you do Vipassana, it's a bit like that too, but the reverse version of it on a smaller scale, right? It's kind of like psychic power when you do Vipassana. When you dissolve your entire body mind into clouds of sensations by using the power of your attention or awareness, right? But when you deconstruct reality, you're also constructing in it. In fact, deconstructing everything to empty particles is the same fundamental insight experientially into how everything is constructed and fabricated. Because again, emptiness and form are identical. So realizing the unborn actually makes you feel like you're giving birth to an entire universe moment to moment. Whether or not a civilization is using physical technology or is just using the power of their mind to create technology or a civilization, that ultimately doesn't make a difference. But on the conventional level, it doesn't make a difference. Because like I said earlier, if everybody in the world is enlightened, there probably won't be any wars.
Of course, how could it be otherwise? If you see the futility of something, you're just not going to move in that direction. It's just like, why would I do that?
Exactly. It's just like the unit. Like sometimes people ask me, Frank, why don't you do this anymore? Like you used to do a lot of this, and when I used to do a lot of whatever that is due to conditionings, it's not like I'm trying not to do that. Maybe someone down the path when I was still trying to dissolve conditionings, there was some kind of resistance and clinching to say, oh, I shouldn't do that. That's conditioning. That's ego. That's bad for my spiritual path. There were moments like that before, but then again, like I said earlier, that's just coming from more selves. The self, one part of the self is telling another part of the self not to do that. Right? So I don't do those things anymore now after recognizing, the nature of experience, because reality isn't going to take me that way. Because those are the path of resistance. Yeah, so it's not like I'm intentionally staying away from all the ego stuff now. It's just that it just doesn't happen. Reality rolling on through the course of least resistance just isn't moving this body, mind, this mitsu towards things that can cause contractions and pain and suffering. It just doesn't do it. Just the way that the clouds don't suffer. They're just floating in there. It's like the weather. Sometimes it rains, sometimes it hails, sometimes it's a sunny day. But all of it is included in the boundless space of the sky. The sky can still experience those phenomenons, the different weathers, due to the different conditioning that arises to produce this weather that's neither good or bad. It's experiencing it through a complete equanimous state. It includes all of those things, but it's none of it.
An orange tree produces oranges. It cannot produce apples. It cannot produce pineapples. No matter how hard it tries, it just cannot do that.
Yeah, correct. That's just due to the causes and conditionings of nature, yeah.
Then it also seems to me, if Michael Jordan was pushed by his parents or by society at large or influenced by other people to become an accountant, he would have never discovered what it is to be Michael Jordan. Because to me, it seems like he was born to play basketball. Maybe he was born something like to be a great accountant, but he did a pretty good job at being a basketball player.
Right. Yeah. And
the same with
exactly.
The same with Frank, and the same with Albert Einstein, and the same with anyone. So to me, it seems like we have to understand our conditioning in order to allow our natural function to shine through this particular body mind.
Yes.
Just like an orange tree produces oranges, no matter how hard it tries, it's not going to produce apples. And I feel like that's the same with humans, right? Mm-hmm. So it seems necessary then to understand that conditioning, even for that to allow to take place. And then we can call that your life purpose, whatever it is, but it's a lot more enjoyable to do that as opposed to, I don't know, being an accountant when you're actually supposed to be playing basketball and being Michael Jordan.
I agree.
Do you know what I'm?
Of course.
My point.
So
of understanding.
Yes. So Michael Jordan, his genetic wiring, again due to the infinite cosmic condition that produces that body mind, has less resistance playing basketball than being an accountant. So the body mind of Michael Jordan, the way it expresses itself, is closer to what he really is than being an accountant. Yes, and different people have, different inclinations on this relative world. And the interesting thing is, a lot of people that undergo through this process of recognizing what they really are, if you look at their lives before, a lot of them are actually extremely egoistic. But then they have a very authentic ego. It's like whatever they did before, even though it's coming from the ego, there seems to be a sense of authenticity, and they're very genuine and very sincere and honest about what their ego were doing. Like Michael Jordan had a very authentic ego. That's why people loved him. He just wanted to play basketball. No apologies. Like even Kanye West too. And I'm inclined to tell you that those people, if you put them down to the spiritual path, if they start to inquire into what they really are, they would have a more quote-unquote success than people who aren't tuning to the natural sort of this wiring and inclination of their body mind. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, of course it does. Of course
so
it does.
the perfect. So after you recognize your true nature, you're automatically going to manifest this Mitsu the way it's always been wired. So I would say that, this enlightenment thing, whatever, is really just going back to how this body mind has always been wired before all the defilements and all the human conditions were piled up. So let's just say, as a thought experiment, that Michael Jordan attained realization, and then he goes back to play basketball. There is a chance that he might just not give a fuck about basketball anymore. But let's just say if he reaches his natural state, and if he was to continue to engage in the world, he's going to continue to play basketball, and he's going to do it better. He's going to be in a flow state all the time, because that's what his body mind was, sort of designed to do. Oh, I guess I can take myself as an example. Before realization, I was doing films. I was making videos. I was playing the violin, like I said. I was doing bodybuilding, lifting weights. I was coaching people, and I'm still doing the same things. Somewhere down the path, I had to let go of them all. I had to learn to live without them. But then after going back, after putting the emptiness back into the form, after integrating the emptiness, this truth into the conventional level of the human, I'm doing them way more efficiently, on a very practical and physical level. Even when I lift weights now, like, I have no goals anymore for what my body looks like. I don't even watch my diet anymore. I just like going to the gym, and I can do more now in an hour than I did back then in like 2 hours. Like, my physical conditioning just improved, because we spend so much of our energies and so much of the calories, glucose in our brain, creating this illusion, creating all those thoughts and contracting ourselves into this tiny little ball, that we don't have energy for anything else. And after we remove all that blockages and all that conditionings, the force of nature just runs through you without any resistance. So when I create now, when I lift weights or whatever, I'm actually just experiencing the universe doing itself. So I'm actually tapping into this creative power at its rawest form by just getting out of the way. And what this creative potential does, again, is not up to you anymore. But because of the natural inclination, the genetic wirings of each of our bodies, we're different individuals are going to be perpetuated into manifesting this emptiness, or engaging in the human level, human world, through different means. So people talk about life purpose and all that stuff, right? Even though that from the space of infinite space, that belongs to the conventional level. But our true purpose, passions or whatever, will find itself through the course of least resistance through that space. And then if you want to find out what your life purpose is on the conventional level, if you recognize what you really are at the deepest level, you are going to find your true purpose, I believe. Again, like I said earlier, some people's true purpose might be just being in the cave and meditate all day. That's one way that emptiness, the infinite, expresses itself. For another person, is talking about the Dharma, being a teacher. Well, other people don't say a thing. They just kind of go back to their normal lives. They had a 9-to-5 job before as accountant. After awakening, they continue to do that, but they're gonna do it through a radically different lens. And then other people might switch careers completely. And the person that goes back to being an accountant and find no resistance towards it, and doing that out of love and helping the people around him at work or whatever, they're going to be like, quote unquote, transmitting Dharma regardless of what they do. They don't even have to talk about this directly. Even just tiny interaction between strangers. If a person who doesn't have any conditionings interacts with a stranger, that's going to transmit some kind of should I say, positive energy, just in that one little encounter. So the person who went back and being an accountant and finds no resistance and love doing that work, and it's perpetuating unconditional happiness through that, then that's what his Mitsu was designed to do, was being an accountant. If he somehow switches career, then that new career is what the course of the nature's course of least resistance is, through that particular Mitsu. And it could be, I don't know, being a jester maybe. Yeah.
So what fascinates me about that is if we live our lives as an ego, as a person, you could say before knowing your true nature, and then after your true nature, you're still going to think, you're still going to feel, you're still going to act in the world.
Yes.
Would it be correct in saying that we're going to do these things much more effectively?
Much more effective. Yeah, it doesn't change anything except for the resistance to what the what is. That resistance is the source of all suffering. Once you remove that resistance to what is already just happening in the universe, then suffering goes away. It's as simple as that. The resistance to whatever is already happening in nature is what's creating wars. It's what's creating individual sufferings. Things will go on, but then there will still be pain in the universe, just like the way that the cheetah snaps a gazelle and eats a gazelle. The gazelle, probably still feel pain. But that pain is just arising as the course of nature. But there's no resistance to that pain. And without resistance to pain, there's no suffering. And see, without resistance to the pain itself is experienced not as deeply too. Like I said, when I was lifting weights, I could feel a lot of pain before. Now I don't feel as much pain. My muscles don't get as sore because I'm not resistant to that. There's no I'm contracting to this meatball because I want to be a bodybuilder. I want to get healed. I'm thinking about what I want to look like, 10 months down the line. And that thought is contracting this workout. That mental contraction is making this pure physical activity harder with more resistance.
That's actually a wonderful example. So are we saying then that they were experiencing the same thing, but they described it differently according to their knowledge, conditioning, and so on? But the actual place in which they arrive is the same. It's identical, right?
Yeah. But again, like I said, there's different flavors to it. There can be different
What do you mean by
flavors to this.
flavors?
That's an interesting question. If somebody was to recognize what they really are, and they're sitting across the room, or they're having a conversation with me over the Skype, the form, the appearance that are vibrating through this emptiness is different. That's the kind of like different flavor. And you can that's sort of a more perceptual way of describing it. You on the conventional level, you still perceiving different things, or else you're going to be bumping into the walls and putting on other people's shoes. So the flavor just means that it's sort of the different ways in which emptiness vibrate into form. So if you have a slightly different nervous system, if Ramana Maharshi has a slightly different nervous system than the Buddha, which I believe they do.
It's fair to assume that.
Yeah, and then they would manifest this truth in a slightly different flavor. And the difference is not in kind. It's just a degree and a difference in flavors. Does that make sense? That's why different teachers talk about it differently. And then the way they describe their moment-to-moment experience after realization, obviously you can sense the similarity between them all, what they're describing. You can see that they're pointing to the same thing. But there's a different flavor to it. Not just the way they describe it, but maybe the way they actually experience it could be slightly different in flavor. But it's the same thing. Let's just say it's ice cream. Everybody's eating ice cream. Let's just imagine everybody who is awakened is just eating ice cream all the time. But there's chocolate ice creams, and there's strawberry flavored ice cream, but it's all ice creams.
They call realization or non-duality one taste. It's one cosmic ice cream, but different flavors of it. In fact, I think if you practice different techniques and follow different traditions, you'll have a slightly different flavor of realization. And your moment-to-moment experience, your nervous system, and your brain can be slightly different. If you check out my last video, Superpower of Consciousness, I go into details about this, about how you're cultivating different powers of the mind. Just like different superpowers have different powers, or different athletes, they go through trainings under different sports and different contexts. It's the same muscle groups for everybody, but they will have a different function of it, different strengths and weaknesses.
Or you can say that everybody recognizes the true nature as being the screen of a movie. But then, you're playing different movies. But then you know at the deepest visceral level that the screen is the screen. Doesn't matter what kind of movie you play, it's still, it's just dancing pixels and lights. But the reconfiguration of the sensation appearing through that screen could be different. And of course, ultimately, there is really no distinction between the screen and the content. Yeah. That the context and the content are one. So different people experience different flavors of the same realization, but it's still the same realization. Because even the different flavors are just the same things. Same but different. They're there but not there. Yeah, we're going to run into another paradox again. Yeah, every time we describe it, it's going to be paradoxical.
So ultimately, could we just say that life is just about learning, understanding?
Or unlearning, depends on what lens you look at.
Or unlearning.
Yeah, unlearning.
But like in general, why does it do all of this in the first place? It seems to want to discover itself.
Yeah.
It seems to want to explore, try different things.
There is no why in nature. Like I said earlier, the universe doesn't call itself the universe. It doesn't think of itself as the universe. It doesn't think of itself as this being that's undergoing through a process of awakening. I guess you can look at this through the lens of dependent origination. The Buddhist deepest insight is actually the insight of dependent origination. Why does anything happen the way it is at all? Due through the causes of different links of the cause and effects. This arises and that arises. This ceases, that ceases. And without this interaction, without these links of dependent origination, those infinite webs of causes and conditionings, there are no isolated events. There are no isolated entities. Nothing has an inherent existence apart from this process of co-arising, codependent creation. So that's another way to perceive the insight into emptiness, and how it's also the same thing as love. You know, everything is just this participatory and situational process of interactions, and everything is evoking and manifesting each other through this co-creative activity. We're not things or objects, but the manifestation of infinite webs on infinite webs of potentialities, giving rise to each other as processes in accordance of how situations occur. So if you can depict the Buddha mind, it'll be like an Intersect net with no solid points or lines. So in another way to put it, in a very poetic way, this is why emptiness is also love. Every single breath that you take, every action that you take, every thought you have, is the entire universe doing its best in this cosmic symphony, harmonizing itself to make this particular moment a precise and absolute perfection. And it cannot be any otherwise. So look how much quote-unquote ego you must have if you think you can change reality. You have to alter the links of this Intersect nets, where every single point is connected to every single other point in the universe. But even the intention of trying to change things or the effort is still just part of the spontaneous unfoldment. So you can't change anything that isn't already happening by itself. And whatever you're trying to change, it's already disappeared. Sort of like the observer's effect in quantum physics. The process of observing something changes the property of that which is being observed. And if a tree falls in a forest and there's no brains there to perceive it, it doesn't exist. So sound is the process of dependent origination. In and of itself, there is no sound, there is no tree, there is no brain, there's no perception. But when all the causes and conditions arise in this particular moment, precisely this way, boom, sound, boom, tree, boom, computer, boom, consciousness, boom, awakening. Me and my friend were working out, and then he was like, who is doing this bicep curl? And you look around the gym, you know, everybody is lifting in synchrony. Everybody is lifting each other. The whole universe, from the macro cosmic level to the microscopic atomic level, is doing its best to assist you in doing this curl. A train doesn't exist by itself. There's no such thing as train. Think of all the different components that have to come together for quote-unquote train to exist as the phenomena. You know, without the passengers in the seats, without the wheels turning a particular way, without the train tracks, without the people building the train tracks, and each of those points is connected to everything else. And this transcends space and time because the people who built the train were quote-unquote in the past, which gives rise to this present moment of the experience of you being on the train, and then goes all the way into the future. In fact, time also doesn't exist apart from dependent arising. The past and the future and the present co-dependent arise, which means neither the past nor the future nor the present has an inherent existence. It pulls the rocks away from any kind of ground you try to stand on, including awareness, Brahman. Nowness is an empty phenomenon. You know, when verification meets identification, that's where conflicts and separation begins. When you try to solidify essence and give meaning to things, naming things, when in fact no thing has an essence, that's when quote-unquote violence starts. There's no Democrats,
there's no Republicans. In fact, Democrats and Republicans, Christianity and atheism, they cultivated rights as well. You're creating the universe while the universe is creating you, while it's creating itself simultaneously. The most direct example is the dictionary. Every word in a dictionary is defined by other words in a dictionary, right? And all the other words used to describe all the other words are also defined by other words. So every word is inherently empty without definition. And you can apply this to every thought, sensations, objects, concepts, and on and on. So do things exist or not exist? It neither exists nor not exists. That's why I always say realization transcends even existence and non-existence.
Yeah, but then you can even zoom out a little bit more and say that even dependent origination is empty as well. That's just another lens. There is no cause and effect from the space outside of time and space. So, if you want me to explain why does anything happen over, I kind of still have to go back to, the domain of you can say knowledge. Even though this quote unquote knowledge of dependent origination is also very experiential as well. Yeah, you see through how this come in contact with that and that happens. It's actually pretty commonsensical. It's very obvious if you look at it like that. Yeah. But to truly experience it, it's not so obvious. It's easy to understand intellectually. Just like it's easy to understand intellectually what I said in the beginning of the video, how everything is a mental fabrication, how everything is a mental construct. Even this consciousness thing is a mental construct. Perception, feelings, consciousness, they're all just a mental construct. When I say mental construct, again, I'm not talking about conceptual mental construct. I'm talking about how once you zoom into the nature of experience, the way that physicists zoom into an atom, when they try to dissect reality, and with the spirituality work, you're doing that from the inside, so to speak. You're doing that through direct experience. Once you see through the microscopic particles of direct experience, how everything is just constantly arising and passing away, everything is just vibrating into form through emptiness, as emptiness, then you can see that everything's constructed. Your perception of everything I'm perceiving here, is just bubbling out of nothing. It's just being constructed. And the one of the deepest insight that you can get as a meditator is this moment of cessation. How like everything in your direct experience just vanishes. Not even consciousness exists. It's like kind of like going into a coma, but then you come back online again. And that insight is probably the most profound experiential insight that you can get as a meditator. See, Eckhart Tolle went through a cessation. Eckhart Tolle, when before he woke up, he was blacked out for like a day or something. He went through a major cessation. And then when his consciousness came back online, his entire nervous system is rewired. He realizes at the deepest level how all this is a fabrication, how all of it is empty. It doesn't have any inherent existence. Even consciousness itself, because if you lose consciousness and then coming back online through the practice of meditation, you can see that. You can see how every particle of this quote-unquote reality is being disintegrated. All the fabrications are being taken away until you become unconscious. And of course, during that moment of unconsciousness, you don't know like what there is. There's no consciousness there even. So you don't even know how long you're there for. But when it comes back online, you can see particle by particle how the different fabrications are starting to pile up and creating this experience. So you can say that, Buddha's first insight is everything is suffering. So basically he's saying that everything is conditionings. Even perception itself is fabricated, is sort of like a conditioning. Conditioning of this body mind to create an experience. That's a very biological conditioning. Just your raw perception, your raw experience of reality, moment to moment, is already some kind of conditionings. Conditioning of existence. Conditioning of having a body mind. But then on top of those deeper conditionings, or more existential or more perceptual conditionings of just having a raw experience of consciousness even, we pile other conditionings on top of that, like the identities of the self, the conditioning of our stories and our traumas. But those are all just fabricated as well. All the conditionings are just arising out of nothingness.
In your previous point, you said even consciousness doesn't exist. But what is aware that doesn't exist?
Well, it exists when you are aware. But then when you're not aware, it doesn't exist. So consciousness is also dependent on conditionings. That's one of the deepest insight. It's like even consciousness, this being, this vast spaciousness, this being, is arising due to conditioning. I'm aware of the clouds right now, and the cloud exists at that moment due to conditioning of my mind. The object of consciousness, the object of perception, is codependently arising and is conditioned upon that which you're using to be aware of that. Subject and object codependently arise. And if you realize this truth of codependent origination, you realize that both the subject and the object are empty. It doesn't have any inherent existence apart from this coming together of the right conditions. Boom, there's an experience of the cloud. Both the perceiver of the cloud and the clouds are empty. It doesn't have any inherent existence apart from this interaction.
All right, I'd like to zoom in on that just to make it very, very clear. When you say perceiver of the cloud, let's define that. Do you mean the thinker? Do you mean the ego? Do you mean thought?
Well,
Thinking?
even if you remove the thinker, the hearer, the seer, the perceiver, the observer, the knower, the experiencer.
Right.
If you remove that locus of attention that's been contracted due to conditionings of the self, even if you remove that, there is still some kind of experience. You experience the cloud without a center. But there is, I can still say there's a cloud, but it's just phenomenons floating in this vast space. But there's still an experience there. There is still something there, but that something is made up of nothing. That's when you kind of transcend the duality between even existence and non-existence, between life and death, between something and nothing. That's when we truly get down to the true non-dual space, when the absolute level and the conventional level merge as one. So it's like the rainbow. You know, there's an experience of the rainbow. When I see the rainbow now, it does feel like experientially, the rainbow is just experiencing itself without any kind of locus of attention anywhere. Boom, there's a rainbow and it's rising through the space of consciousness. But the experience of the rainbow is still there. But what is that rainbow? It's nothing. The different conditions have to arise at that particular moment for the rainbow to spontaneously appear. And then this links of dependent origination, you can say the links of the different elements in the weather, in the sky, whatever. And also the people that are perceiving it. Those are also links of other dependent arising of the clouds. You see how the different factors have to spontaneously arise together, come into existence through this contact of nothingness to create the something. That's what that is the magic of it all. Like nobody really knows how that happens. What is the rainbow? The rainbow is completely empty, and the different elements that arise to create that experience of rainbow, in and of itself, none of those links have an inherent existence. Yes.
Where does the rainbow appear? In emptiness.
Yes.
That's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
When you say it's empty.
I'm not saying it's not there. Some very radical people can say that it's not even there. I mean, is it there or not there? It's both. It's there but not there. It's there but it's not there the way you think it is. It's not there the way you perceive it to be. There's an experience of it. But that experience is fabrication.
Could we zoom in on that?
Yeah.
What do you mean by fabrication?
To me, fabrication, the word fabrication and the word emptiness are the same thing to me. Things are empty because they're fabricated. They're constructed. They're constructed through their senses. They're constructed through the mind. That's the easiest way to look at it. Yeah, and then again, when I explain those things, I kind of have to like use that as a ground. I still have to say, oh, it's constructed by the mind. But what does that even mean? Even that statement is empty. But if I was to sort of use a ground to kind of explain the phenomenons, which I can't really do without language, without some kind of a ground, I can use the ground of mind or consciousness, saying that, okay, maybe a better metaphor is putting on a virtual reality goggle. When you put on a virtual reality goggle, everything you perceive in this field of experience is constructed. It's very obvious. Unless you're deluded, you think the virtual reality world is real. In fact, before awakening, everybody is thinking that their virtual reality world is real. But in fact, if you put on a VR goggle and experience this reality through the virtual reality goggle, which every particle is constructed, where is it constructed? Is it in your mind or is it in the virtual reality goggle? It's both and neither. So there is really no space in which the virtual reality goggle or the virtual reality world is being constructed, but there is an experience there. So if you take out a VR goggle, what are you left with? You're still left with, it's the same thing really. When you put on a VR goggle and you're playing a game and taking it off and experiencing reality without a VR goggle, you're still in the VR. You're still in the VR of fabrication. Of the fabrication of the mind, of perception, of senses, of feelings. And that is really the only gateway we have to reality, through the six senses. But the nature of those six senses is empty. It's constructed due to the cause and effects of the present moment. Yeah, but that's as far as you can take that, because anything outside of that you really can't speak of at all. That's why people still use the word awareness or consciousness or the mind, and the Buddha still says, oh, the Dharma. But then he again and again emphasizes that even the Dharma is empty, because the mind is always going to try to find refuge in conceptualizing things.
It's not just boiled down to conceptualizing things and just seeing things without conceptualizing. Is that ultimately what we're speaking about here?
You can say that you experience the virtual reality world without putting another goggle on it, the goggle of conceptual lenses.
The goggle of thinking.
Yeah, the goggle
of knowledge, the goggle of labeling things.
Labeling,
right?
Judgments, yeah. So you perceive experience as itself, but then you still don't know what that experience actually is, because it's still being filtered by the senses. But that's the deepest that you can go, unless you take away your senses and your mental and physical apparatus, then you're pretty much dead. So as long as we're alive and having an experience, this experience has always been fabricated. Even the raw fabrication of just the raw experience itself is arising through conditionings as well. The reason why this insight is so profound is because the only reason why we suffer is because we think this part of the dream is more real than the other. That's where we make the separation. No part and no corner of this virtual reality dream is more real than another. And the whole sense of separation, the I-ness, just can be boiled down to you thinking that you're real and other people are not as real as you. That's the source of suffering. And that's where the contraction is. And the only reason why you think something is real but not the other part is real is because of some kind of contraction, emotional attachment to it. We feel like this is real. We feel like we're ourselves. Therefore, we contract into this tiny little ball, and we feel this contraction here, and we feel an emotion here. This contraction is what separates us from thinking that we're more real than other people. We go into wars with other tribes because we think our tribes is more real than their tribes. That's where religious wars come from. Yeah, we think our God is more real than other gods. And that just comes from contractions. And the contractions create some sort of emotional reactions. You feel at visceral, cellular level that I'm more real than you. Therefore, I'm separated from you. Once you enter non-duality, you no longer perceive this or that to be more real. You can say that nothing is real, which completely demolishes that statement itself as well. Saying that nothing is real and saying that everything is real is the same thing. Saying that no self is the same as true self, same thing. See, but even saying nothing's real, or quote unquote, this is all a dream, is another mental model, just a thought. If you investigate at the most subtle level, right, there's no five senses at the level of direct experience. At the end, you empty out even the aggregates. Now you can say that, all senses will merge as one singular unity of zero. There's zero distance to anything. So saying this is perceived through that is already another mental construct, another thought. There's no perception, sensations, or awareness apart or separate from quote-unquote awareness, and this wakefulness is equally awake in all directions. Even the notion that sensations are sort of like arising and passing away, people talk about impermanence, but there cannot be impermanence without space or time. So impermanence or any other spiritual insights are something that you wake up from, not wake up to. So they're just grounds for you to dissolve more conditionings. So the notion that sensations are rising and passing through some, fundamental substrate or container like consciousness is already saying too much. It's already creating a separation. There's nothing beyond or behind anything, because distance and space are just more mental constructs. And so is awareness and consciousness. Those phenomena aren't the truth of the ground of being, because consciousness is only codependent arising with the object of consciousness. Even something like, boundless space, like the sixth jhana, infinite space. There's an object in there. The object is infinite space. Seventh jhana, nothingness. There's an object in there too. The object is nothingness. The eighth jhana is called neither perception nor non-perception. Why is it called that? Because the object in perception has been dissolved to a point where it's in between the state of consciousness and unconsciousness.
And if the object of consciousness and the subject, which is, consciousness itself, are codependent arising, insert the dependent origination inside, then if the objects start to vanish, so does the subject. If there's no object in consciousness, there's no consciousness. Again, this gives you the insight that even consciousness needs to be let go of, because even consciousness is not self, it's empty, it's not the truth of the ground of being. So with the progression of each jhana, the mind is experiencing less and less fabrication, so it's dissolving more and more mental constructs. The sixth jhana, infinite space. The reason why you're still experiencing infinite space in the sixth jhana as a temporary state is because you're still dissolving the illusion of space. The first four jhana is the dissolution of the body. The reason why you are experiencing that is because you still, in a very subtle way, or even subconsciously, believing that the body exists as a solid entity. Now, if your default state of consciousness of the body, without going into deep meditation states, is already experienced to be a cloud of sensation, an empty hologram, then it's very difficult to even access the first four jhanas. Because the experience of the first four jhanas presupposes that you still experience the body as a solid entity. So right before the ninth jhana, which is a cessation, where again you let go of even consciousness, your perception becomes like a TV that's about to lose signal, like a static TV, static noise. That's the eighth jhana. And then boom, your entire reality disappears. There's no more fabrication. And then you go into Nirvana, which means to blow out, to extinguish. Not even awareness remains. So you access the state over and over and over again, training you to die over and over and over again, to meditate until you lose consciousness and then coming back online over and over and over again, and erasing the duality between unconsciousness and consciousness. If you can be alive while you are totally dead, then there's no suffering. So again, consciousness is not a ground or a mirror that reflects reality. The reflection is the mirror. The source is appearance. The unmanifested is the manifested. Nirvana is samsara. Duality is non-duality. This is a very deep stage of realization where even the mirror is deconstructed, where the big self disappears, and there's just this. So deconstructing reality down to unconsciousness, and then coming back online after cessation. If you have this insight over and over again, experience cessation hundreds and hundreds of times, you get the insight how deconstructing or destruction is creation, is fabrication. You get the insight how every single particle in your direct experience, in your whole field of infinite sphere, is constructed moment to moment to moment. So this is when you erase the duality between deconstruction and construction. Again, when you vipassanalyze everything down and completely seizes all fabrication, it's the same insight as realizing that everything is fabricated. This is when you merge the duality between life and death, between love and death, where realizing the unborn and the unconditional means that every single moment feels like you're giving birth to the entire cosmos. Ultimately, phenomena are beyond arising, beyond abiding, and beyond vanishing. Everything simply is, and no words can describe it. It's too direct. Again, sensations and phenomena are not arising or passing through some fundamental substrate like consciousness. There's no duality there. The sensation is awareness. You can say they codependent arise, or you can just simply say, this is it. It's just too simple for the mind to comprehend. See, the quote-unquote redness of the flower doesn't belong to the flower. Neither is it in the head or filtering through some sensory apparatus in the eye. It's too intimate for the mind to make a separation. There's actually 0 dimensions. So the paradox always leads you back to the neither or nor. This is neither conscious nor not conscious, neither real nor not real, neither self nor not self. And that's the middle way, which is the first sermon that the Buddha gave after his enlightenment. So true no self goes beyond even Brahman. When you still perceive or experience the Brahman as the infinite self, that's not no self yet. That's why people who are abiding in non-duality or Brahman for a while, they're like, oh, I'm in God consciousness. But when they fall into no self, they're like, what the fuck? But there's much more freedom in there because you're not verifying or identifying with even consciousness itself.
The self is just a bundle of thoughts, resistant to something conceptual understanding of things. And when there is no self, that is true self. Is that what you mean by no self is true self?
Yeah. The self is just a conceptual layover on top of experience. That's it. And through that conceptual layover, we create an emotional and physical contraction that physically separates us from other people. This entire journey is about dissolving every speck of solidity in the body mind until you transform like an alchemy from solidity to liquid to air into empty space. But then the empty space and solidity are actually the same thing. It's just literally, it's just a lower frequency or vibration of emptiness. And then physics also proved that from another lens. Yeah, but then you actually get to experience that. Like string theory, everything is vibrating strings. And well, what is made of the strings? It's just nothingness. It's just energy that are vibrating. Going back to like the endeavors that I used to do, before this realization, I'm going back and doing the same thing. I'm still making videos, but now I'm making videos about this. And then when I play the violin, it's coming from that place. Yeah, it's just like the violin just kind of playing itself for no reason. even a discussion like this on the intellectual level, it still helps. Like the understanding of the mind still helps to dissolve the mind. In order to dissolve the mind, you have to understand the mind. In order to dissolve conditionings, you have to understand conditionings at the intellectual level at first, initially. But then that will get dissolved as well. And then when you come back and discuss these things through the lens of the concepts, again, it's going to be coming from a radically different place. You can sense it. It's like people who are talking about this not from direct experience, you can sense that they're talking from the intellect instead of talking about their direct experience. So there is still a difference between talking about emptiness from solidity versus experiencing and talking about solidity from emptiness.
To me, what fascinates me about these conversations is I love asking a particular question or like discussing a particular question.
Yeah, ultimately there's no questions, no answers at all, right? Yeah, but then in order to discuss those things with the mind, with thoughts, and with concepts, they're tools to help other people recognize that there is no answer and there is no question. But then you have to come from somewhere. You have to use the mind to dissolve the mind, so to speak. Yeah, just like again Ramana Maharshi's example, you use the thorn of a rose to remove another thorn.
If we look at the world of science, if we look at what we do in society, we do mathematics, we do biology, we do chemistry. Broadly speaking, we do science. Mm-hmm. We also have various technologies, engineering, and so on. Why? Why do we do it? What's the fundamental thing that we're trying to discover?
Science can be boiled down to understanding the truth on the conventional and practical level, how things work in the dream. So science is good at answering questions about the dream and creating gadgets within the dream. But it doesn't actually help us. Well, maybe it can, but most of the scientific endeavors are about finding out what the nature of the dream is, but it doesn't tell you how to step out of the dream, so to speak. It's still within the domain of thoughts and logic, even like in mathematics. Mathematics is real under that matrix. But outside of the matrix, 2 and 2, does that equal 4 or 5? Ultimately, neither, right? Numbers and mathematics, an entire scientific domain is a man-made construct. But we still need science to have better lives at the practical level. Science is probably the most efficient tool to understand the dream from the dream. From the perspective of nature, it doesn't matter. Yeah, science causes a lot of destructions as well. Science is a double-edged sword. Just like knowledge, when we talk about even spiritual knowledge, even the Dharma itself could be a double-edged sword. Science creates a lot of destructions, but it also creates a lot of the beauties on the conventional level.
What's your name again?
I don't know.
Frank?
I think beauty is one of the most overlooked things in spirituality. The elements of aesthetics. To me, alleviating suffering was just a byproduct. To me, it's all about aesthetics. The perceptual shifts and the way you experience moment-to-moment reality and how beautiful every single sensation is at the natural state is beyond any depictions that you can see in art and music. But of course, it includes all the arts and musics. If you look at the Buddhist arts, especially the Vajrayana and Tantra stuff, it's some of the most psychedelic things you've ever seen in your life. Socrates says truth equals wisdom equals love equals beauty. If you read the sutta, Buddha's words are so poetic, it gives you goosebumps. Look what he said to describe arhatship. In the seen, there's only the seen. In the heard, there's only the heard. In the sense, only the sense. In the cognized, there's only the cognized. As you see that there is no thing here, you will see that you are therefore located neither in the world of this nor in the world of that, nor in any place between the two. This alone is the end of suffering. And the profundity of your moment-to-moment experience is beyond anything you can conceptualize, imagine, or intellectualize. It transcends but includes
of philosophical ideas, contemplations, and scientific theories and inquiries. My coaching service is called Contemplative CrossFit. It's the merging of athletics, aesthetics, and awakening. Just like the most aesthetic physique is the one of symmetry, the most aesthetic mind is the non-dual mind, where every single point is connected to every single other point in infinity, and so on and so on. I always say enlightenment is a physical process from a certain lens. It's the rewiring and the cleansing of your entire nervous system. So of course, science can contribute to that transformation.
To me, no scientific theory is more or less true than other ones. They can be more practical. Some scientific methods, the gadgets that you create, can alleviate some pain and suffering, sure. Yeah, but then if science is the only tool that you have, then we could run into a lot of troubles as well. People get stuck in scientific dogmatism a lot. There's a lot of scientific ideologies. People disagreeing about like what is right science, what is not right science, and it's how you use science that's the key. If you use science from the perspective or from the non-perspective of non-duality, you're gonna use it more efficiently to use it to serve mankind. For example, Xi Jinping is a very scientific-minded teacher. He's a master of meditation, and same with I don't know if you've heard of Chula Dosa, the author of The Mind Illuminated, the more modern teacher that combines science with meditation. Their tools are very effective because they combine science with direct experience. So for example, Xi Jinping is kind of working with neuroscientists to create this, what he calls the Enlightenment cap. So his goal is to create some kind of a machine, or through like, I don't know, Neuralink kind of gimmick, to zap people into non-duality way faster than if they would just sit down to meditate for 10 years. Because that process could be sped up. If there's a neurological base to non-duality, of course, then you can kind of temper with it through scientific means. And that could speed up the process of self-realization through science. And Buddha was kind of doing science as well. He's doing the science of the mind. I will venture to say he's the first true neuroscientist of the mind, in a sense. His methods was extremely scientific. So the methodology of science definitely has a place in both the conventional level, even if you're only stuck in a dream, versus when you step outside the dream and use that tool to enhance the dream, or to even use that tool to wake up from the dream of separation. Yeah, you can use science to dissolve solidities in the body-mind. Even something like psychedelics is kind of scientific too. You're experimenting with the nature of experience. By putting this amount of chemicals in your body-mind, you experience this. By putting this different kind of chemical, different dosage, you experience that. And that gives you some insights into the nature of experience, the nature of mind. So you're just doing experiments. Yeah, and what is like self-inquiry meditation practice? Little experiments you perform on yourself. So at the end, you're just playing with your own brains. And awakening work and consciousness work is the max effort level of this process of playing with your brain. Science, you can play with your brain a little bit, but the direct experience of the isness transcends even the highest of all IQs. And everybody is actually experiencing that. When you carry out those experiments, even if it's through something like self-inquiry or meditation, if you do it quote-unquote scientifically, with logic and with some kind of systems, they could be more efficient. Or even if you just physically tamper with your brain and speed up the process of meditation or self-inquiry through some kind of interface, like Enlightenment cap, that's also very helpful. Again, just going back to merging the conventional with the absolute, utilizing science through the perspective of non-duality. That's where the science is going to be carried out most efficiently, I believe. If you look at a lot of physicists, they're actually quite mystical, right? Like Einstein was kind of like a mystics. I don't know if you're familiar with the four-path models of the Theravada Buddhism. Like you have like stream entry, which is like the first level of awakening, and then you have like fourth path, which is arhatship. I believe a lot of artists and a lot of scientists, even without knowing it, they're actually stream enters. They have some sort of opening into what they really are, and they derive a lot of scientific truths from those glimpses or from those openings. If you look at like philosophers like Wittgenstein, even he had a lot of mystical experiences. He realized through his mystical experiences that language cannot be used to arrive at the ultimate truth. So his whole project is using language to destroy language, using logic to destroy logic. Like his book, The Tractatus, it's very scientific. It's very mathematical. Because he's a logician. So his book attempts to destroy all philosophy from beforehand, because he thinks all philosophers are mentally masturbating with logic and with concepts. But then he has this book that's extremely logical. There's just axioms after axioms. But then each axiom destroys the previous one, but also destroys itself. So he's using logic and mathematics to destroy logic and mathematics itself. Does that make sense? But then he's still using it as a tool. Just like you use the ego to dissolve the ego, so to speak. Different questions are just different tools. Like the question of self-inquiry, who am I? That question is probably more useful for the ego to dissolve itself than say, what kind of pussy am I going to get tonight? Yeah, so science, it could be a very efficient tool in that regard. The reason why we follow certain traditions in spirituality, because they work for certain people. And how they arrived at truth, if you look at their methods, it's actually extremely logical too.
The question is then, have these techniques truly worked?
Yeah.
Has Buddhism truly helped people understand their true nature?
Spiritual techniques just happen to be some of the more efficient tools in the dream world to dissolve the dream, so to speak. How do spiritual teachings produce results? But it depends on what kind of techniques you use. How does something like Vipassana works? Vipassana works by dissecting reality and penetrating it and seeing clearly for what it is. The word Vipassana means to penetrate and to see clearly. So it works by penetrating the different structures of reality and seeing how they're fundamentally made up of the same emptiness, by seeing clearly what that is. So that's how Vipassana works. How does self-inquiry work? You keep questioning yourself until there's no more questions and no more answers left. So again, different techniques have different ways of dissolving that solidity. Like the body scanning technique works because if you use the laser beam of your attention or awareness to sort of deconstruct and dissolve all the different solidities and blockages in your body mind, eventually you reach empty space. Just like different methods of weightlifting works through different means and slightly different methods.
And could we say then that ultimately we want to drop our methods? Ultimately we want to drop our techniques?
Of course. Yeah, you could say that. Ultimately it's to drop out techniques. Just like, an athlete, if he was entering a flow state, he's not thinking about techniques. Violin is just playing itself. And you can apply that to everything. It's like every single moment is just spontaneously happening. And it's through that space that things are performed and carried out and functioning the most effectively, most efficiently, from the most love and connectivity. Yeah, so absolutely you're right. At the end you have to drop all the bullshit about spirituality and all the techniques and just be. The unknowable is the unknowable. But this sense of not knowing is vast and timeless and infinite and all inclusive.